On Sunday, April 17th, and many days of the year, you'll find him center stage, bringing music to your ears. Who is he? You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning with the Myrtle Beach Herald. We're focused on the Long Bay Symphony, and we're visiting with Dr. Charles Jones Evans, its conductor. Good morning, Dr. Evans.
Good
Great to see you.
you.
Charles, are you comfortable with Charles?
Of course.
You're pretty comfortable with a lot of stuff, aren't you?
I've been comfortable with a lot less than that.
With students on the college campus and the youth orchestra and all the involvement. I'm sure you're around folks who call you lots of different things.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And doctors, one of when did you study for your doctorate?
I can just tell you my age. If you want me to come right out. No, I got my doctorate from the Eastman School of Music in, I don't remember, 95, something like that.
Is that right? Yeah.
And that was after some time away. I had my residency there and then left to take a job in Mississippi and never went back. And had to finish up the dissertation.
Oh, yeah.
That's always the ABD status.
That's right.
I finally got that monkey off my back. It takes a while.
Take a little time. That's exactly right. No need to rush that.
Well,
no need to rush that.
Yeah.
It's great to have you back. It seems like one of the last times we were together, we were focused on a big event that was coming up. We were filming in Florence at the Bradley House Studios leading up to Big Beach Music Performance, which was a huge success.
It really
Very exciting out there with the Maurice Williams and so many of the others. Real highlight for a lot of locals and others. But the season, the large chamber season's about up.
Yeah, the big symphony orchestra subscription is. We've got our big finale coming up, and it's a wonderful program of music from the theater. And what it is everything from ballet to opera to spoken drama. It just kind of gives the audience a survey of all of the music that's been inspired by the various facets of the stage.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to elaborate a little bit. We've got the Litchfield Dance Company dancing some excerpts from The Sleeping Beauty of Tchaikovsky. We've got some actors from Coastal Carolina University joining us for a small segment of the spoken play Peer Gynt with some of Grieg's incidental music that they'll recognize. But I doubt they've ever heard that music with with the play, with the elements of the play. And we've got a couple of solo singers, John Pickle and Suzanne Woods, who are old friends of mine, who live in New York and perform with opera companies all across the country. So they'll be coming in and doing, well, for example, they're doing the great first act finale of La Boheme, and La Boheme is probably the best known opera out there. If you don't know it from anything else, you would know it from Moonstruck. Remember when Cher was crying at the Met? Yeah, well, that was La Boheme. And it's just a wonderful sequence of 2 or 3 arias and duets. It's about a 15, 20-minute thing with all the best stuff in it. So they'll be doing that as well as some other things from opera and operetta, too, because they actually performed and recorded with the Ohio Light Opera and did a lot of Victor Herbert and, Johann Strauss kind of thing. So they'll be running the gamut from opera into operetta.
And this is just 11 days away, Charles.
Yes.
Folks still have an opportunity to be a part. I mean, do you know if the event's yet sold out?
No, it's not sold out yet, but it'll be a big seller for sure. Because it just provides such variety, and it's a lot of recognizable music. We'll be doing things like the Barber of Seville Overture and, various things like that. And like I say, even in Sleeping Beauty, I know people will recognize some of the tunes, if from nothing else, from the Disney movie.
Well, one of the great things is the performances oftentimes, the larger performances on Sundays at 4, so it gives a great opportunity for our viewers in the PD or southeastern North Carolina, where most of our viewers are, to make the trip down and still get back and not necessarily get home for dinner, but get home for a late dinner.
Right. And I think that's part of our strategy. We had been back and forth in the past about doing a 7 o'clock performance or something. And I think this just has, in general, worked out better because, the seniors who are a little bit hesitant to get out at night very much prefer this time. And like you say, either they can go back home or that, after the concert you can go out to dinner. And have an enjoyable time and still get back at a reasonable hour.
For viewers who need to get off to school or get out to work now, Charles, what's the best number to call if a viewer was interested in possibly attending the music from the theater performance on Sunday, April 17th?
Yeah, just call our offices at 448-8379.
Okay, 843-448-8379. If someone's not there now at 7:15,
Right.
you've got a voicemail?
Oh, yeah, and they
okay.
call you right back and get all the information, or get back to you with, if you leave the credit card information or
Okay,
whatever.
great. And the performances at the Myrtle Beach High School, the Performing Arts,
Right, Music and Arts Center,
Music
I guess
and
is
Arts
what
Center,
they've lighted
great.
on, yeah.
a setting like that for a viewer who may not have attended there, who may not have been to a Long Bay Symphony performance,
Yeah.
it's a positive setting.
Yeah, we always have to make sure to let people know that, because I think in the glitz and glamour of this area, the idea of the major theaters around here having a lot of luster, and the high school auditorium not, it's really not true at all. I mean, the theaters that are well attended around here, such as the Palace, they're great for what they do, but they're not acoustic places. Everything is mic'd. So there really is no better place than the High School Music and Arts Center for this, and it's a wonderful facility. People need to remember that it was actually built with a great contribution of funds from the general community to make it into a civic auditorium, not just a high school auditorium. So it seats, about 2,000 people, and
I think that's right.
Very spacious, and the most important thing to us is that it's acoustically wonderful. I mean, you have to have a certain acoustic environment for an orchestra. We're talking about an ensemble of 75 plus soloists who are performing with no microphones. And that's part of the greatness of the idiom. You can do anything you want with a mixing board, but if you've got musicians up there pumping out that sound with no amplification, it's a pretty startling thing to hear. It's wonderful.
It is, and the great thing is virtually any seat in there. I think I sat in a performance on the floor in the center all the way back.
Yeah.
That beach music performance, because it was such a crowd, and I know you've had so many other performances there at a similar sellout type crowd. Virtually any location in the house.
Yeah. Well, I think secretly the best seats are way in the back in the balcony. If you want the sound to hit you best, you go way up there, because it has to roll its way up there, and then it's reflected off the back. But most people think that those are the cheap seats.
Oh, that's good to know. Wow.
But that's the best place to hear an orchestra, is to get in the balcony.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Charles. Well, next year you may see folks all sitting up there far away from you, and I'm sure you probably want them there for that recognition. But at the same time, it's great. That's great to know. Real quick about yourself, Charles. Are you originally from the area?
Originally from Dallas. Yeah. So.
What brought you east?
Well, it's just a kind of a typical journey that a person in my line of work would have. I've actually done a lot of work in the proper South, I should say. It's funny, I always grew up, well, when I went off to college, I did an undergraduate at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and then went back to Dallas for my master's, and then up to Eastman for a doctorate. All the time I'd been away for school, I was always a Southerner. I was looked on as a Southerner. Well, when I went to Mississippi, I was certainly no Southerner. Coming from Texas was not being from the South. So it's interesting. However, there is a similarity of character and nuance that I think, let's just take one thing, the weather. I am, given my druthers, I'd prefer to be in a warm climate. And there are certain things that go with that, a certain congeniality that I find easier to work with than up in the Northeast. And so I've worked in North Carolina, Mississippi, Arkansas. I still have an orchestra in Arkansas.
Oh, that's right.
I fly back several times during the year. So it was really just a question of the job opening. And I was so attracted. I guess it's been nearly a decade now. I guess it has. It will have been this next season, I believe. But I came here, and there were positives and negatives. But overall, I could see the growth that this area was going to experience and was experiencing at that time. And I thought, what better place could you be?
You could see that growth almost a decade ago. Has it happened?
Of course.
It's happened the way.
Now, as to how, whether it's happened the way any of us has seen it, I don't know. I think it's a very deceptive animal, growth. It's just people coming in. It's how you shape it. But I think it's very important. As a community grows, for it to establish the quality that it wants to have. And I think having a symphony orchestra in the community is a very important aspect. An art museum is very important. Good schools, good hospitals, all of those things are strong considerations. I was talking with someone with Burroughs and Chapin about how ecstatic they were for our last beach music concert that they had sponsored. And, you know, they were so enthused about this, you know, having a symphony in the area. And we were talking about the fact that, of course, a lot of people, a lot of companies like BMW, I guess, where are they? Right outside of Greenville?
That's right.
Yeah. Their questions about the area were, well, what's going on culturally? And when they heard about the symphony activity and so on and so forth up there, they felt very attracted to that. And that's kind of what we need to do here. When doctors and other businesses and companies are looking to locate in the area, they're going to ask those questions.
I saw that. Even though now, does the PD area have a symphony? Does Florence have a symphony?
Florence has a symphony. Wilmington has a symphony. They're both kind of the same ilk, which is not what we do. We are a professional orchestra, and unabashedly so. What that simply means is that everyone gets paid. Most of our players play in many other orchestras. That's just the way it is everywhere.
Right.
The Charleston Symphony is filled with people who play in other orchestras.
Is that right?
Yeah. Especially their big orchestra series. Now, they have a core of musicians, about 35 perhaps. But when they play a major orchestra concert like the one we've been talking about, they hire from outside because they can't afford to keep them all there, of course.
Sure.
But, and I don't want to speak out of turn or without adequate knowledge, but Florence and Wilmington, they have a lot of student affiliation. So there's students and faculty members and so on there. So it's not the same kind of thing. What you get when you're dealing with a professional orchestra is mobility. Somebody calls and say, could you play an outdoor concert in May? Sure, we've got it down. Could you do a chamber orchestra concert here? Yeah, that's great. We'll schedule it in, quote you a price. Do you have a string quartet? Of course we've got a string quartet. You want it for this big function. That's what we are. I mean, it's a professional.
That is a tremendous drawing factor for the area.
Yeah, it's a full mobile, full service organization, and I'm sure we will touch on it at some point. But we're in the schools teaching the kids about the instruments. We just gave a couple of days ago 2 performances of Peter and the Wolf out at Wheelwright Auditorium at Coastal Carolina University for elementary school students. And on and on. I mean, we're always out there doing various things.
That's tremendous. You all have a fantastic youth orchestra.
Oh, definitely, and that gets better every semester. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You get more and more kids who are more focused, and that really says a lot about this area. We've got kids now who are auditioning as they graduate. They're auditioning to go to conservatory.
Is that right?
Yeah. And some of these students have been or will be playing as apprentices in the symphony.
That must be tremendously gratifying.
It really
Charles,
is.
for you to see it in almost a decade. And I remember seeing one facet of the youth orchestra perform an event at the Art Museum on the south end of the beach. There was a tea there, and it was incredible to see. This was back 7 or 8 years ago.
Well, that's a tradition we've maintained. We just did that a few weeks back. And, I mean, everyone is just amazed at these students. But they're out there. And as this area gets more diverse and grows, you've got students like that. And then maybe some of them have come from somewhere else. But most of them actually now have grown up here.
Right.
They didn't come from New Jersey 2 years ago and they're, you know, upholding their standards against what's... No, it's not like that. They grew up here and they're taking lessons here and they're aspiring to become much better.
That's tremendous. 843-448-8379. If a viewer was interested in getting their child or grandchild or nephew or niece involved in the youth orchestra, that would be a good number to call.
For sure, and just let us know. We've got actually a concert on April 28th coming up.
Oh, great.
And we've got 3 concerto competition winners, so 3 of our musicians will be performing solos with the orchestra, which is another great opportunity for them.
How do you all raise funds to keep things going and to continue to grow, Charles?
That's a perennial question. Yeah, well, we get generous grants from city and county and state, you know, and so on. Everyone probably is aware of the ATAX funding that we've gotten. And on top of that, it's the most important thing is we're growing our corporate base. And now that's a challenge all nonprofits face. But I think, again, as this area grows, what I find is that there's more investment in this area. There's more ownership of this area. Whereas 5, 6 years ago, you'd try to ask for sponsorship. Well, our home office is in Charlotte. We have no involvement here. We're getting a little bit more of the idea, yeah, this is our home. This is our market, and so we need to show that we're participating in that market.
That's a very good point. I think we have seen much more of that.
And that's a natural change. So there are many ways in which it grows. It grows up and then grows down too, develops roots.
That's a very good point. What about it for you, Charles, when you think back early on in life? What was it at an early stage that got you interested in making music? And
Well, my father, for sure. I mean, my father was an organist and church musician, and he went to Eastman also.
Is that right?
Strange, yeah.
Wow, followed
It's
him.
quite by chance. I didn't really intend to do that for my future, but that was where I mean, it's a very fine school. It's one of the greatest conservatories in the country, so I was pleased to go there as well as he. But I didn't pick up on his music directly. I would just sort of play around with it. And he tried to get all of us boys lessons. By the time it came around to me, he gave up, actually. And then I asked him for it. So
Is that right?
yeah, so after a couple of years, I got into it, and then he supported it wholeheartedly. So
You said all of us boys. You've got brothers? You have
2
sisters?
older brothers.
Yeah. Just
And
the 3 of you all?
Yeah, he tried piano lessons and guitar lessons with them, and there was no interest.
Oh, yeah.
So
But at some point, you decided you were going to make music a career. When do you think that hit? And I mean, had you ever
don't
thought
know.
about growing up? I mean, that you would make
yeah,
a
sure,
career?
because I see that in students, either at the college level at Coastal, where I teach theory and ear training and conducting classes, or in the youth orchestra. But I think we all have defining elements. What really floats our boat, so to speak, or what makes us feel like we matter. And that was it for me. As soon as I got into it, it felt right, and I loved doing it. I was very good at it, and got recognition for it. That's really all I needed. I'd rather do this than anything else in the world.
Wow. That's exciting. And
Yeah.
and you hope that
I'm
everyone
very
in the
fortunate.
profession feels that same way.
Sure.
Yes. What about the experiences as a conductor, Charles? What all goes into preparing for, let's say, this Sunday the 16th performance coming up? How much advanced preparation? How do you go about selecting what will be in the music from the theater? What all goes into?
I don't think I could completely verbalize that, because people there's no way to explain the complexity of it. Obviously, in a career like mine, which would be around 20 years of this kind of professional work, I've got a whole backlog of things I've done several times, and then there's a lot of new things, like the Peer Gynt. I've never pulled from that play and tried to present it. But there are loads of things I've done, and it's just sort of like a chef with all the ingredients. You think, I could do this and combine this. So there's a tremendous amount of planning. There's a tremendous amount of concern. What will play well with our audience? What's going to provide variety, as well as educate? I mean, it's easy to entertain people, but I want them to walk away having being entertained, yes, but having learned something about the arts.
So that's a real incentive for a viewer to travel a couple hours.
Oh, I think so. You can't get anything like that in this area except through us.
Not just to be entertained, but also educated.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they get some exposure to Tchaikovsky ballet, to incidental music, to straight theater, just spoken theater. We've got opera, operetta, the whole bit.
Now, is that something that your peers in cities larger than ours that have a professional orchestra would be making that same effort? Do you think?
I think
most
so.
of
I
your
think
peers are
music
like you?
directors do it in their own way. I mean, there's some who are less apt to go with really, let's say, less orthodox programming. This is probably somewhat less orthodox programming because it's complex. We've got dancers, and then we also, do instrumental things, and then actors and all of that. It's a kind of a 3-ring circus. But it all flows real smoothly and gives people perspectives. But like I say, all music directors do it their own way. And that's why themes are kind of important. You can run an historical thread through the music, give people an idea, or do music just from a certain period, from the Baroque period, and give people some idea of the sensibility of that. But it's all an educational experience, as well as, entertainment.
Is it difficult to be under the gun? You're talking about 75 musicians oftentimes and more.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're in the center of it all. I mean, at some level, it's much like a dancer or much like an actor or actress on stage in a performance. But of course, really, what's that like for you?
Well, I think it's funny, as I was going to get into this a little bit earlier and kind of got off a bit, but I just get so amused when I talk to some students at some stage in their career and they say, I think I'd like to go into conducting.
Oh.
And I just smile. I say,
Yeah.
you have no idea. It seems like a neat thing.
Oh, yeah.
And most people just think a conductor just stands up and waves his arms and
Sure.
bosses people around.
Uh-huh.
Getting up and doing the rehearsals and performances is about 5% of what I have to do.
Is that right?
It's
Yeah.
amazing. But the idea of being up in front of all those people, utilizing the time properly, is a major challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel proud of the way I can organize rehearsal time. But the challenge is, here's the program, here are all the people involved, and here's your window of time, and you can't go over that amount of time.
Right.
So you're constantly, while you're rehearsing one thing, thinking, okay, I just lost 10 minutes there. What can I cut from the next thing?
Mm-hmm.
And still make sure everyone's comfortable for the performance.
And that's during a performance oftentimes, and surely no one in the crowd knows you're having to think that.
No,
What am I going to
no.
cut out? How do you pass it on to the folks there? And I mean, how do you pass it on to your musicians?
Well, now, if you're talking about, I was talking about cutting from
during
rehearsal time.
rehearsals, yes,
But even in
yes.
situations like that where something goes wrong,
Right.
you have to have some sort of sign language, like,
Uh-huh.
and that's
right.
the
That's
advantage.
why your back is to the crowd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of having your back to the audience.
Yes, yes.
You can kind of give little signals and make sure everything works out.
So they are really constantly looking at you as well as thinking about, I mean, you are in that central position for a reason.
Well, yes, and it's not so much constantly, let's say, deriving the beat from me, as everyone has, their internal rhythm, and you start a piece and it's going to flow pretty much. I mean, you stop conducting, it's not going to fall apart immediately.
Right.
It's the transitions that you're needed for, and the encouragement and leadership,
Uh-huh.
and being there in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So-
Those are some big ands. I mean,
Yeah, they are. They are.
Those are big.
But it's funny, you just get used to what you do and you don't think about it so much. I mean, there are times when I think about it, when maybe there's a soloist that I don't feel real comfortable about. I think, oh, what if that happens? What am I going to do? And you're braced and ready, because at any moment, something could be there and your hand has to be right at the right place to save it.
Right.
So,
Wow, Charles. So there are some sign language again, or some types of language that again the audience will never see, but the
some of them do.
soloist
They
or
like
others,
to
yeah.
they like to sit right off to the side so
Right.
they can, well, what was this that you were doing? I
Oh,
said, I
yeah.
have no idea.
So there's a point where you answer questions. Does that happen before or after performances? Is that something
Well,
you used to do, or-
people will come up after performances and ask
Right.
questions, but we do, and for this concert too, have a pre-concert talk where I come in at 3:15
Great.
and just sort of run through the concept of the program that afternoon and
Mm-hmm.
talk about the pieces. And that way, I've gotten so many comments from people how grateful they are to get some orientation of the music.
Great,
Because this
yeah.
day and age, people aren't brought up, in the classical mainstream so much, and nor do they have the time
Sure.
to, at home before they go, look up this composer and learn a little bit about it. So when they come and they're able to get some background there just before they hear the piece, it does a lot for their experience when they hear it.
Does that background, does that research happen right there, or the presentation prior to the performance happen in the auditorium? Or is
No,
that
it's
separate?
actually in the cafeteria.
Okay.
Off to the side.
All
so-
ticket holders would be allowed to come,
Oh
or
yeah.
is that
Oh yeah.
okay?
At
Great.
3:15. So
That would be free
About a
for-
half an hour, and then there's another 15 minutes before the concert.
Before the
starts.
concert. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. A great incentive for folks to try to get out there by 3, to be in the cafeteria by 3:15.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. How long does a performance normally last? We just have a couple of minutes, Charles.
Yeah, within 2 hours.
Okay, great.
Including intermission. Usually, you're going to see about 40, 45 minutes on each half with a
Right.
break.
Okay. You've been teaching at Coastal Carolina University almost since you arrived. You're there.
Oh, that was the nature of the job. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
was a combined position, teaching there, and that's why the doctorate was important as well. That's a requirement nowadays, the way the competitiveness in the market is. So they wanted someone with a doctorate who could teach at the university level
Charles,
and,
okay. Yeah,
and do the symphony.
and do the symphony. Are there ever needs for volunteers?
Oh, gosh, yes, of course. We always have needs for that. So if anyone wants to be a part of the symphony family, we have a wonderful guild that does fundraisers and serves lunches to the musicians on days when we have double rehearsals on the Saturday before the Sunday performances, and a whole load of things. It's a lot of fun to be a part of it. There's need for office help. If anyone's interested, please give us a call.
That same phone number,
Same phone number,
448-8379.
Yeah.
What's been the most exciting thing for you, Charles, in this almost a decade here in Myrtle, the expansion of the symphony, to see the broad support of the community, knowing that the more folks find out about it, the more involved they are? What has been the most exciting?
I think that's it, just the growth and the idea that we're really establishing something here. You know, I have had other experiences, and I, of course, have an orchestra now in Arkansas also, but it's in a community that is a certain population, it's got a certain size, it's got basically 4 concerts plus 1 or 2 other little things a year, and it's very easy to maintain. I certainly don't need to be there to maintain it like I do here, because we're tilling the soil, we're making this grow now, and that's what's so important and so rewarding, is to see not only the quality of the orchestra, how that's improved over the years, but the way the public has accepted us, the way the public has begun to understand how we are an integral part of the culture in this area.
Absolutely. Charles, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Dr. Charles Jones Evans coming up next. A lot of things to fit in at once. We just got a minute. Music from the theater. Sunday, April 17th, 4 p.m. You heard Charles talk about it. Get there at 3 o'clock. At 3:15, you're in the cafeteria. Spend 30 minutes figuring out what Music from the Theater is going to be all about. The performance starts at 4. You can get out of there and head to dinner. You can get out of there and drive back to Lumberton or Laurinburg or back to Darlington. Take the time to give them a call, 843-448-8379. It's getting close. He said off camera, it's the best cultural bargain in town. He's talking to you in Laurinburg. He's talking to you in Marion and Dillon and Marlborough County. Make the trip down here. Sunday, April 17th is getting close. And let him know that you were watching by getting in there and sitting up in the cheap seats, getting up in the back of the house, up in the top of the balcony. The excitement of really hearing the performance the way it needs to be heard anywhere in the house will be a treat. Make the trip Sunday, April 17th.